The Devil's Church. The Devil's Church. By Machado de Assis. Chapter 1. A marvelous idea. An old Benedictine manuscript relates that one day the devil took it into his head to found a church. Though his profits were continuous and sizable, he was humiliated by the odd role he had played for centuries, which lacked organization, rules, canons, rituals. He lived, so to speak, off divine leftovers, human favors, and oversights. Nothing definite, nothing regular. Why shouldn't he have his own church? A devil's church would be the effective means to combat the other religions and destroy them once and for all. Well, then, a church, he concluded. Scripture against scripture, breviary against breviary. I'll have my own mass, with wine and bread galore, my own sermons, bulls, novenas, and all the other religious trappings. My creed will be the universal nucleus of spirits, my church one of Abraham's tents. And then while the other religions quarrel and split, my church will be unique. Neither Muhammad nor Luther will surpass me. There are many ways to affirm, there is only one way to deny everything. As he said this, the devil shook his head and held out his arms in a magnificent virile gesture. He immediately reminded himself to go to God, confront him with his idea, and challenge him. The devil then lifted his eyes, aflame with hate, harsh with vengeance, and said to himself, "Let's go, it's time." And quickly, beating his wings together with a commotion that shook all the provinces of the abyss, he ascended from the shadows into the infinite blue. Chapter 2. Between God and the Devil. God was receiving an old man when the devil arrived in heaven. The seraphs bedecking the new arrival with garlands stopped their work immediately, and the devil remained at the entrance with his eyes on the Lord. "What do you want of me?" asked the Lord. "I haven't come on behalf of your servant Faust," answered the devil with a snicker, "but on behalf of all Fausts of all centuries." "Explain yourself." "Lord, the explanation is simple, but first allow me to say this to you, take in this good old gentleman, give him the best place in heaven, order the most divinely tuned zither and lutes to receive him with the most divine choruses." "Do you know what he did?" asked the Lord, his eyes full of tenderness. "No, but he'll probably be one of the last ones to come to you. It won't be long before heaven will be like a hotel that is empty because of its high rates. I'm going to build a cheap boarding house, that is, I'm going to found my own church. I'm tired of my disorganization and my haphazard, adventitious reign. It's time for me to win a final and complete victory. I came to tell you this out of loyalty, so you won't accuse me of being underhanded. Good idea, don't you think? You came to tell me about it, not to legitimize it, the Lord pointed out. You're right, answered the devil, but vanity enjoys hearing applause from the masters. It's true that in this case it will be the applause of a defeated master, and Lord, I'm going to descend to earth and lay down my cornerstone. Go ahead. Do you want me to come back and report on how everything turns out? That won't be necessary. Just tell me why, after being dissatisfied with your disorganization for so long, did it only now occur to you to found your own church? The devil smiled with an air of mockery and triumph. He had a cruel idea in his soul, a searing comment in the saddlebag of his memory, something that made him believe he was superior to God himself in that brief instant of eternity. However, he held back his laughter and said, "Only now have I finished an observation I began several centuries ago. I have seen that virtues, daughters of heaven, are to a great extent comparable to queens whose velvet cloaks are trimmed with cotton fringes. Now I propose to pull them by those fringes and bring them all to my church. Behind them will come the fringes of pure silk." "Stale rhetoric," muttered the Lord. "But look. Many such bodies who kneel at your feet in the temples of the world come in bustles from the drawing room and the street, their faces tinted with the same powder, their kerchiefs all smelling the same, and their eyes sparkling with curiosity and devotion between the holy book and the mustache of sin. Look at the eagerness, the indifference, at least, with which that gentleman publicizes the benefits he liberally distributes, clothes, boots, coins, or any other materials necessary to life. But I don't want it to seem that I'm picking on insignificant details. For example, I'm not talking about the self-satisfaction with which that lay brother piously wears your love and a religious medal at his breast in the processions. I'm talking about more important things. With this the seraphs flapped their wings, which were heavy with boredom and fatigue. Michael and Gabriel eyed the Lord imploringly. God interrupted the devil. You are banal, which is the worst thing that could happen to a spirit of your kind. Everything you're saying or may say has already been said and resaed by the moralists of the world. It's a hackneyed subject, and if you haven't enough resourcefulness or originality to restate it in a new light, it would be best for you to be quiet and forget about it. Look, the faces of all my legions show marked signs of the boredom you're causing them. That old man looks nauseated, and do you know what he did? I already told you I don't know. After living an honest life, he died a sublime death. Caught in a shipwreck, he was going to save himself by clinging to a plank, but he saw two newlyweds, in the flower of youth, who were already grappling with death. He gave them the life-saving plank and dove off into eternity. No one witnessed this deed, for he was surrounded only by water and the sky above it. Where do you see the cotton fringe in that? Lord, as you know, I am the spirit who denies. Do you deny the selflessness of this death? I deny everything. Misanthropy can take on the appearance of charity, for a misanthrope, leaving life to others is the same as showing hatred for them. Sly and rhetorical, exclaimed the Lord. Go ahead and found your church, call on all the virtues, gather all the fringes, convoke all men. But go, get out of here. In vain the devil attempted to call out something else. God imposed silence upon him. At a divine signal, the seraphs filled the heavens with the harmonies of their canticles. The devil suddenly felt himself airborne, he folded his wings and fell to earth like a bolt of lightning. Chapter 3. Good news for mankind. Once on earth, the devil did not waste a minute. He hurriedly slipped on a Benedictine robe, since it was a habit of good reputation, and began to broadcast a new and extraordinary doctrine with a voice that echoed throughout the depths of the century. He promised his disciples and the faithful all the earthly delights, all the glories and most intimate pleasures. He confessed he was the devil, but he confessed it in order to rectify men's notions about him and to disavow the tales pious old women told about him. Yes, I am the devil, he repeated, not the devil of sulphurous nights and soporific tales, or the terror of children, but the one and only true devil, the genius of nature who was given that name in order to remove him from the hearts of men. See how well-bred and pleasant I am. I am your true father. Come, follow me and embrace that name which was invented for my dishonor, make an emblem and a standard out of it, and I'll give you everything, everything. He spoke in this manner in order to excite enthusiasm and enliven the indifferent, in other words, to congregate the multitudes around him. And they came. As soon as they arrived, the devil proceeded to define his doctrine. In regard to its substance, it was what one could expect from the spirit who denies. As for its form, it was sometimes very refined and at other times impudent and shameless. He proclaimed that the accepted virtues ought to be replaced by others which were the natural, legitimate ones. Vanity, lust, and sloth were reinstated, as was avarice, which he declared was only the mother of economy, the difference between the two being that the mother was robust and the daughter skin and bones. Anger had its best justification in the existence of Homer. Without Achilles' fury there would have been no Iliad. Muse, sing the wrath of Achilles, son of Peleus. He said the same about gluttony, which produced Rabelais' finest pages and many good verses in Cruz y Silva's Hyssop. It was such a superior virtue that no one remembers Lucullus' battles, only his banquets. It was gluttony that really immortalized him. But even if one were to disregard these literary and historical arguments and consider only the intrinsic value of gluttony, who would deny that it was much better to feel an abundance of good food in the mouth and belly than meager mouthfuls or the saliva of fasting? The devil promised to replace the Lord's vineyard, a metaphorical expression, with the devil's vineyard, a straightforward and real locution, since he would never fail to provide his flock with the fruit of the world's most beautiful vines. As for envy, he preached coldly that it was the principal virtue, the origin of infinite prosperities, a delightful sentiment which supplemented all other virtues and talents. The crowds ran after him enthusiastically. With great gusts of eloquence, the devil instilled the new order of things in his followers, changing their notions about the world, making them love the perverse and detest the wholesome. For example, there was nothing more curious than his definition of dishonesty. He called it man's left arm, the right arm being strength, and his conclusion was simply that many men are left-handed. He did not require that all men be left-handed, he wasn't an exclusivist. He accepted those who were either right or left-handed but not those who were neither. His most profound, rigorous explanation was that of venality. One casuist of the time even confessed that it was a monument of logic. Venality, said the devil, was the exercise of a right superior to all others. If you can sell your house, ox, shoe, or hat, things that legally and juridically belong to you, why is it that you cannot sell your opinion, vow, word, or faith, things more valuable than mere possessions because they are elements of your conscience, that is, your very self? To deny this would be to fall into absurdity and contradiction. Don't some women sell their hair? Can't a man sell some of his blood to transfuse it into another, anemic man? Are blood and hair, parts of the body, more privileged than character, the moral part of a man? Thus, having demonstrated the principle of venality, the devil did not delay in expounding its worldly and pecuniary benefits. Then, he showed that in view of social prejudice, it would be appropriate to disguise the execution of such a legitimate right. In doing so, one would exercise venality and hypocrisy at the same time and would thus become doubly worthy. He was everywhere at the same time, examining and rectifying everything. He naturally combated forgiveness for wrongs and other principles of kindness and cordiality. Though he did not categorically prohibit slander without payment, he encouraged that it always be practiced with some form of remuneration in mind, monetary or otherwise. However, when slander was solely an uncontrollable expansion of the imagination, he prohibited the receipt of any salary, for this was equivalent to being paid for breathing. He condemned the use of all forms of respect, citing them as possible elements of social and personal decorum, except when an obsequious display of respect was necessary for achieving personal gain. However, this exception was eventually eliminated by the fact that the desire for personal gain converted respect into mere flattery, hence flattery, not respect, was actually the applied sentiment in such cases. To finish off his work, the devil believed it would be appropriate to destroy all human solidarity, seeing that the concept of love for one's fellow man was a serious obstacle to his new institution. He showed that this concept was the simple invention of parasites and insolvent businessmen, for one should show nothing but indifference, and in some cases, hate or contempt, toward one's fellow man. He went so far as to demonstrate that the notion of one's fellow man was erroneous by quoting these lines from the cultured and refined Neapolitan priest, Fernando Galliani, who wrote to one of the marchionesses of the old regime, "To hell with fellow men. There are no fellow men." The only situation in which the devil allowed someone to love his fellow man was that of loving another man's wife, because this kind of love had the peculiarity of being nothing more than the individual's love for himself. And as some disciples may have found that such a metaphysical explanation escaped the comprehension of the masses, the devil had recourse to an apologue. 100 people take out shares of stock in a bank, for common operations, but each shareholder is only concerned with his own dividends. That is what happens with adulterers. This fable was included in the Devil's Book of Wisdom. Chapter 4. Fringes and more fringes. The devil's prophecy came true. All the virtues whose velvet cloaks ended in cotton fringes left their cloaks in the nettles and came to join the new church after their fringes had been tugged. Others followed them, and time blessed the institution. The church had been founded, the doctrine was being spread, there was not one region of the globe that was not acquainted with it, one language into which it had not been translated, or one race that did not love it. The devil raised shouts of triumph. However, one day, many years later, the devil noticed that many of the faithful secretly practiced the old virtues. They did not practice all of them, nor did they practice them completely, but they did practice some of them partially and, as has already been said, secretly. Certain gluttons retreated 3 or 4 times per year to eat frugally, precisely on days designated by Catholic regime. Many misers gave alms at night or on sparsely populated streets. Various defrauders of the treasury occasionally returned small quantities to it. At one time or another, dishonest men told the unadulterated truth, but they maintained the usual deceitful expressions on their faces in order to give the impression of fraudulence. This discovery alarmed the devil. He began to observe the evil more closely and saw that it was greatly increasing. Some cases were incomprehensible, like that of a Levantine druggist who had long been poisoning an entire generation of a certain family but who rescued the victim's children with the byproducts of the drugs. In Cairo, the devil found an unrepentant camel thief who covered his face so he could go into the mosques. The devil confronted him at the entrance to a mosque and directly reproached him for his behavior, but the thief denied the accusations, saying he was going to the mosque to steal a camel from a dragoman. However, after stealing it in the devil's presence, he gave it as a gift to a muezzin who prayed to Allah for him. The Benedictine manuscript cites many other extraordinary discoveries, among them the following one, which completely disoriented the devil. One of his best disciples was a Calabrian, 50 years of age, a celebrated forger of documents who had a beautiful house in the Roman countryside, with paintings, statues, and a library. He was deceit in person. He even took to his bed in order to avoid confessing he was healthy. However, the devil discovered that not only did this man not cheat at gambling, he even gave gratuities to his servants. After winning the friendship of a clergyman, he went to him every week to confess himself in a solitary chapel, and although he did not reveal any of his secret activities to his friend, he always crossed himself twice, once when he kneeled and again when he stood up. The devil could hardly believe such treachery, but there was no doubt about it, the case was real. He did not waste an instant. The shock gave him no time to reflect, compare, or conclude from the present spectacle anything analogous with the past. He soared up to heaven again, trembling with rage, anxious to find out the secret cause of such a singular phenomenon. God listened to him with infinite satisfaction but did not interrupt or answer him, nor did he even gloat over that satanic agony. He looked the devil straight in the eye and said, "What did you expect, my poor devil? The cotton cloaks now have silken fringes, just as those of velvet had cotton fringes. What did you expect? It's the eternal